All right, back to the NBA. Sixers seat Game 2. Still no Embiid for Philly. How would James Harden respond after his rough Game 1 outing? With a rough Game 2 outing. He's consistent. Second verse, same as the first. 20 points for Harden, that's it. On 1 of 5 from deep. And a team-high 3 turnovers. I mean, what is going on with James Harden? Miami wins again. Philly now find themselves down in an 0-2 hole. Nick, are the Sixers drawing dead with this version of James Harden?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to call them dead because they haven't gone home yet. And theoretically, I think this series, one thing we have seen in this series is that Embiid would be feasting. And if Embiid can come back miraculously for Game 3, then they're not dead. But they're in rough shape like my beloved Dallas Mavericks are. They're not ready to call time of death, but they're calling in the priest and the family members. Not looking great. But James Harden, to me, is a more fascinating story here, Wilds. Because I don't know how this happened. So people are like, oh, too much partying, too much miles, too much wear and tear. But when? So let's just go back to moments over the last 2 seasons. His first 3 games of last year with Houston, he averaged 37 and 11. His final 3 games, healthy with Brooklyn in the playoffs. So we're talking about June, 11 months ago, post the initial hamstring injury. He was 33, 7, and 13. That was 11 months ago. And now, I think I was at the last game he scored 30. It was a Nets game against the Lakers when he had 33, 12, and 11. That was in January. And when you watch him, Wilds, one of the things that made him great was that he could, it's kind of nuanced, but he could jump off either leg. You didn't know, it's why he's the greatest Euro stepper ever, because he could jump off either leg. He can't do that anymore. So I don't know if it's just the injury. I don't know if it's that the injury combined with not taking care of his body. I don't know that maybe it's Occam's razor. It's, hey, guys, it's the playoffs, so James Harden's not supposed to be great. I don't know what it is. But one of the greatest scorers ever, which he was. Now, if he scored 35 last night, it would have been gobsmacking. So it's sudden. It's out of I don't want to say it's out of nowhere, but it's the type of decline you don't typically see from a player that didn't suffer a catastrophic injury. And he didn't suffer a catastrophic injury. Yep. He came back from the hamstring injury during the playoffs. So I don't know what's happening, but I know it is as jarring of an immediate decline for a great player as I can remember.
Okay, so that's what's confounding. And I'm not willing to say, Broussard, that it's all physical. I think the both legs thing is interesting. Maybe it's the hamstring injury, has never fully healed. Maybe it has, but he doesn't feel confident in it. That's always a thing. It's like guys get hurt. It's like, well, I got to feel confident on it, even though the doctors say it's a 100%. Here's the weird thing about James Harden. He has the ability to turn it on and off at his discretion. Like, we make fun of, I shouldn't say we make fun. I think people take shots at Russell Westbrook because you'll see Russell Westbrook's team sometimes down 25 points in the fourth quarter, and Westbrook will catch a dunk and act like the game is close. And it's like, what is this guy doing? Oh, he doesn't know, look, scoreboard. But it's because he can't turn it off. He can't turn it off. He's like, if I hear the music, I'm going to dance. If the ball's rolling around, I'm going to play my best. Harden can turn it off. He turned it off with Houston. He turned it off with Brooklyn. And now part of me thinks that he's not turning it off in protest necessarily, but he has turned it off. So I think there's a frustration that maybe, I know Windhorst called it the new normal. I don't know if that's true 100%. I think there's an element where he turned it off. And Sixers fans and just basketball fans in general want him to turn it on. Man, believe in yourself. Don't take just a handful of shots in the second half. We need you, Embiid's not here. So the ability for him to turn on and off, for me, Broussard, is the most confusing part of his game.
Yeah, and you mentioned, shooting the second half. There you have it, his shot chart from the second half. Look, in the 2 games, Wilds, James Harden in the second half is 2 for 9 with 8 points and 6 assists. That's the equivalent of a full game. In the second half, 2 for 9, 8 points, 6 assists. The Sixers have been outscored 115-92 over that stretch. So that's the series right there. And you guys make some interesting points, Wilds. Yeah, maybe some of this is mental. First of all, the hamstring. And I know the hamstring's nothing to play around with, right? But I joked about maybe it's the worst hamstring injury in the history of American sports. But it's really looking like that if you blame the hamstring. I've never seen a hamstring injury take a guy out of his game like this. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I wasn't trying to interrupt you. I was just trying to build on it. He suffered the hamstring injury during last regular season. He then came back, Brew, and was excellent in the playoffs. Again, averaged 33, 7, and 13 in the final 3 games against Boston in the playoffs last year. He then retweaked it in the first playoff game against Milwaukee. But it was just a tweaking. You know how I know? Because he only missed 3 games. He came back. Now, he didn't look like himself, but he was healthy enough to be on the court. But Brew, and I caught a lot of flack for this from other media members. He stopped looking like James Harden game 1 of this regular season. And you and I talked about it. Like, wait, is it the new rules? Wild's like maybe it was the new ball. Yeah. Game 1 of the regular season on this show, we talked about how he wasn't taking 2-pointers anymore. Remember? He wasn't getting in line, wasn't taking 2s. He was still passing and he was still shooting 3s, but that was it. This whole year has been baffling. And maybe the Mirage, Brew, was the first 3 games with Philly. Averaging 27 and 12 again, looking amazing. And that the rest of the season,
a year ago.
He's kind of been the same guy.
That feels like 5 years ago.
What's interesting is that you would think that Harden had the game to play well even as he ages. He's skilled. He's as skilled as it gets. His handle is great. He's a smart player, high basketball IQ. He can pass. He can shoot. His game should not be predicated on, I've got that burst to beat my man off the dribble. And so that's odd. I told you guys, he's already played more games than Magic, Bird, and Allen Iverson did in the regular season in their careers. So if indeed, Nick, he's declining, it's natural. I mean, everybody